Everyone, today I want to speak on a title that stirs reflection and depth. A silent woman is protected by God. Silence in a world that constantly demands noise is often misunderstood. But silence is not weakness. It is not suppression. It is not defeat. Silence, when chosen with wisdom, can be a powerful expression of strength, grace, and faith. Throughout history and scripture, we find examples of women who chose silence, not because they had no voice, but because they trusted in a voice greater than theirs, the voice of God. Silence is often misunderstood in today's world. We live in a time when being loud is equated with being powerful, and being outspoken is seen as a sign of strength. But not all strength is loud, and not all power needs to be broadcasted. A silent woman carries a strength that is often invisible to the eye but undeniable in its impact. Her silence is not born out of fear or weakness, but from a deep, steady confidence in who she is and who her God is. She does not need to shout to be seen or raise her voice to be heard in the heavens. Her strength lies in her ability to remain calm when the world around her is noisy, chaotic, and demanding her reaction. It takes incredible strength to remain silent when falsely accused. It takes even more to remain silent when misunderstood, overlooked, or disrespected. Yet the silent woman chooses stillness. She does not lash out or seek revenge. She does not match energy with energy. Instead, she exercises restraint, not because she cannot speak, but because she knows her words are too valuable to be wasted on every storm that passes. That kind of silence is strength refined by wisdom. It's not easy to hold your peace when emotions rise, when your character is questioned, when your worth is doubted. But the woman who does so reveals an inner strength that no noise can shake. Her silence is a deliberate choice, an act of spiritual discipline, a mark of emotional maturity. She doesn't rush to prove her point or defend her honor in the court of public opinion. She knows that silence, when chosen wisely, often speaks louder than any argument. It is not the silence of defeat. It is the silence of someone who knows who stands beside her. In the quiet, she hears God's voice more clearly. In the absence of noise, she finds peace. And in holding her tongue, she protects her soul from the traps of bitterness, anger, and regret. A silent woman walks through fire with grace. She endures trials without theatrics. And in doing so, she becomes a reflection of divine strength, a kind of strength that does not crumble, even when tested. Her silence is not a void, it is a powerful presence. And in that presence she is covered, protected, and made unshakable. A woman who chooses restraint in the face of conflict is not empty of words. She is full of wisdom. There is a divine mystery in the way God responds to those who hold their peace. In a world that glorifies immediate reactions, clapping back, and proving oneself at every turn, the silent woman walks a different path. She understands that her silence is not just a personal decision. It is an invitation for God to act on her behalf. Her silence becomes a shield, a covering, a safe place where divine protection operates beyond what eyes can see. When she refuses to engage in fruitless battles, she allows the Lord to step in as her defender. This kind of silence is not passive or indifferent. It is a conscious surrender to the sovereignty of God. The silent woman trusts that vengeance does not belong to her, but to the one who sees all things. She knows that when she chooses not to fight fire with fire, she is not left vulnerable. She is surrounded by something far more powerful, the favor and protection of God. Her enemies may assume her silence is weakness, but it is in that very silence that God begins to move. He covers her name, preserves her dignity, and turns situations around in ways that no human argument ever could. When others shout, she remains still. When others insult, she prays. When others stir confusion, she chooses clarity through silence, and in those moments of holding back, heaven leans in. Her silence opens the door for God to do what only He can do, bring justice, vindication, peace, and resolution in ways no human effort could accomplish. While others wear themselves out trying to prove their worth, the silent woman is being lifted up by the hand of God Himself. This protection isn't always seen immediately. It doesn't always come in dramatic fashion. Sometimes it shows up in small, quiet victories. The peace that passes understanding, the doors that open when others tried to close them, the truth that rises when lies have spread, The silent woman experiences a divine security that cannot be shaken. She lives in the confidence that no weapon formed against her shall prosper, not because she shouted it down, but because she trusted God to stand in front of her. There is something sacred about a woman who knows she doesn't have to fight for herself. She knows who her protector is, and that knowledge becomes her power. Her restraint is not a burden, it is a shield woven by heaven. She is not alone, not ignored, not defeated. She is protected by the one who hears even the unspoken cries of her heart. Not every battle is worth a response, and not every attack deserves your attention. A woman who understands this truth walks with a wisdom that cannot be shaken by noise or provocation. She has learned to discern which battles are meant for her and which ones are distractions dressed as confrontations. She knows that the energy it takes to constantly defend herself, explain her intentions, or retaliate against criticism is energy that could be spent building, healing, praying, or simply resting in the presence of God. She chooses her battles carefully, not out of fear but out of focus. She understands the value of her peace, and she will not trade it for the temporary satisfaction of proving a point. This kind of woman does not react to every whisper, every rumor, or every provocation. She has matured beyond the need to win every argument or respond to every slight. She knows that silence is not losing, it is leading with wisdom. By refusing to engage in pointless conflicts, she saves herself from spiritual, emotional, and mental exhaustion. Some words are not worth a reply. Some situations are designed to pull her out of character, to distract her from purpose, to drag her into cycles that God never intended for her to enter. She recognizes these traps and walks away, not in defeat but in dignity. Choosing not to fight every battle is a sign of inner strength and divine perspective. A woman of faith understands that some battles are not hers to fight at all. They belong to the Lord. She discerns when to stand firm and when to stand still. There is power in knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, when to walk away and when to take a stand. This balance requires sensitivity to the Spirit of God, and she carries that sensitivity like a compass. She follows peace, not chaos. She follows purpose, not provocation. When people misunderstand her silence, when they misjudge her lack of reaction, she doesn't panic. She doesn't run to defend herself before every audience. She trusts that in due time, truth will rise and God will reveal what needs to be seen. Her silence is not the absence of a voice. It is the presence of wisdom, restraint, and spiritual clarity. She has nothing to prove to those who do not understand her journey, because her validation does not come from public opinion, but from her relationship with God. Every time she walks away from a battle that isn't hers, she wins. Every time she holds her peace instead of launching into defense, she grows stronger. Every time she lets God handle what others tried to put in her hands, she sees His protection more clearly. This is not weakness. This is spiritual strategy. This is divine wisdom. And this is how she preserves her strength, protects her purpose, and walks confidently in the path God has laid out for her. Throughout the pages of Scripture, we see time and again the quiet strength of women who chose silence, not because they were powerless, but because they trusted in a power far greater than their own. These were not women who lacked the ability to speak, but women who understood the weight of timing, the purpose of restraint, and the honor of letting God lead their defense. Their silence was not an absence of voice, it was an abundance of faith. It was the decision to listen more than they spoke, to trust more than they reacted, and to wait on God instead of rushing into conflict. In their silence, they found divine attention. In their stillness, they became vessels of divine favor. One can think of Hannah, who poured out her soul before the Lord in quiet anguish. She was mocked, misunderstood, and accused of being drunk, but she chose not to retaliate. She did not shout back or defend her pain with noise. Instead, she took her sorrow to God. Her silence before men was filled with cries to heaven, and God responded. He opened her womb and gave her a son who would become one of the greatest prophets in Israel. Hannah's story shows us that a woman's silent prayer can move the heavens, and her quiet pain is never ignored by the one who sees in secret. Then there is Mary, the mother of Jesus, who heard the angel's announcement and responded not with a long debate or outcry, but with a few words of surrender. Be it unto me according to thy word. She carried the Savior in silence. She walked through pregnancy, through suspicion, through hardship, and even stood silently at the foot of the cross. Her strength was not in dramatic speeches, but in her enduring presence, her steadfast spirit, and her unwavering trust in God's plan. Heaven chose her not because she was the loudest, but because she was the most faithful in quiet obedience. Even Esther, a queen placed in a position of influence, understood the power of timing. She did not rush into the king's court screaming for justice. She fasted. She prayed. She waited until the right moment to speak, and when she did, her voice was powerful enough to save an entire nation. Her story teaches us that silence, when directed by wisdom, can be a strategy of deliverance. It is not the absence of action. It is preparation for the right action at the right time. These women were not weak. They were wise. Their silence was not passive. It was prophetic. It was the kind of silence that invited divine movement. It showed trust in God's sovereignty and opened doors for miracles. Through their stories, we see that a silent woman is not a forgotten woman. She is a woman who has chosen a higher path, who has decided to let God fight her battles, who lives not by the volume of her voice, but by the depth of her faith. Their legacies continue to whisper a powerful truth to women today that silence, when rooted in faith, can shake kingdoms, open wombs, raise deliverers, and shift destinies. That a woman's stillness is not the end of her story. It's often the beginning of God's intervention. And when a woman embraces that kind of silence, she steps into a divine narrative where she is not only heard by God, but also honored and protected by Him. Silence is not simply the absence of words. It is often the presence of something deeper, something sacred. A woman who embraces silence is not empty. She is full of something that cannot always be expressed out loud. Her silence is not neglect of communication, but a shift in where she places her voice. Instead of speaking outwardly to everyone around her, she speaks inwardly and upward. To God who listens not just to words, but to the heart. When a woman chooses silence in moments of pain, confusion, or conflict, it is often because she has turned her heart toward prayer. Her silence is the sound of faith in motion. In a noisy world, silence is rare. But a woman who retreats into stillness has learned to find strength not from the noise outside, but from the peace within. Her silence is her sanctuary, a place where she communes with God without interruption. While others are quick to speak, she is quick to kneel. She carries her burdens not in her voice, but in her spirit, lifting them in quiet conversations with her Creator. And in that still space, God answers. Not always with immediate changes on the outside, but with deep transformation on the inside. He gives her wisdom, calmness, endurance, and a sense of direction that no shouting match could ever provide. A silent woman who turns her heart to prayer is a dangerous woman in the spirit. While the world may not hear her, heaven does. Her prayers rise from a place of stillness and sincerity. They are not shouted to impress others, they are whispered with trust. They are soaked in faith and often born from pain. And yet they carry a power that echoes in eternity. She may not always have the words to explain what she's going through, but she knows how to bow her head and open her soul to the one who understands without explanation. That kind of silence becomes sacred. It becomes her strength. Prayer in silence becomes a weapon. While others rely on arguments, she relies on an altar. While others seek revenge, she seeks the face of God. And in that divine exchange, she is not only comforted, she is equipped. Her silence allows her to listen. Not just to herself, not to the noise of the world, but to the quiet whisper of God guiding her steps. In the secret place, she is reminded of her identity. In the secret place, she is renewed. And what she gains in silence becomes visible in her character, her patience, her grace, and her resilience. Silence is often where clarity is born. In a world that confuses activity with productivity, the praying, silent woman is a living contradiction. She may look like she is doing nothing, but she is accomplishing everything that matters. She is shifting things in the spirit. She is interceding for her family, her future, her peace. And while others exhaust themselves trying to fix things in their own strength, she lays it all before God and walks away with rest. That kind of woman is not to be underestimated. Her power does not come from how loudly she speaks, but from how deeply she believes. Her silence is her connection. Her stillness is her offering. Her quiet is not emptiness. It is full of prayer, full of trust, and full of strength. She knows that while the world may look for volume, God listens for sincerity. And in that hidden space where no one sees, she finds the most important listener of all, her God, who responds not to how loud she cries, but to how fully she trusts. There is something undeniably powerful about a woman who chooses dignity over drama. In a world that rewards loud reactions, quick clapbacks, and public spectacles, a woman who maintains her composure stands out not because she is weak, but because she is wise. When provoked, insulted, misunderstood, or mistreated, she does not feel the need to lower herself into the chaos. Instead, she rises above it, not with arrogance, but with grace. Her silence in these moments is not a retreat. It is a deliberate choice to protect her peace, her name, and her character. Dignity is not about perfection, it's about posture. A woman who walks in dignity does not allow her environment to dictate her response. She carries herself with the understanding that not every situation deserves her presence, and not every insult deserves her response. Her self-worth is not up for debate, and because of that, she doesn't waste energy trying to prove it. When others raise their voices, she lowers hers. When others try to bait her into conflict, she chooses calm. Not because she doesn't feel the sting of disrespect, but because she refuses to let it shape her behavior. She understands that drama feeds on attention, and the moment she engages, she adds fuel to the fire. So she refuses to participate in chaos. She refuses to be pulled into arguments that only lead to bitterness. She refuses to let someone else's noise determine her peace. Instead, she protects her spirit by guarding her reactions. She stays grounded, composed, and thoughtful, because she knows that her value doesn't lie in how loudly she can defend herself, but in how she chooses to preserve her inner peace. A woman who prioritizes dignity over drama knows that silence can often be the loudest statement. Her refusal to engage doesn't go unnoticed. It speaks volumes about her discipline and self-control. People may not always understand her silence, but they will respect her for it. In time, those who sought to drag her down with words or actions will find themselves speaking into empty space, while she continues to rise, untouched by their noise. That kind of strength is rare, and that kind of restraint is not born overnight. It is cultivated through maturity, self-respect, and trust in God's justice. Dignity also allows her to stay aligned with her purpose. When she avoids unnecessary drama, she creates space to focus on what truly matters. She doesn't get tangled in temporary battles that distract her from long-term growth. Her silence is not just about staying quiet. It's about staying focused. She understands that every time she resists the temptation to react in the flesh, she strengthens her spirit. She elevates her mind, she purifies her heart, and she walks in a way that honors both herself and her Creator. Her silence protects more than just her peace. It protects her legacy. It safeguards her reputation, her relationships, and her future. While others may be remembered for their outbursts and conflicts, she will be remembered for her grace under pressure. And though she could have responded, though she could have fought back, she chose a higher way. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she had too much to protect. Her silence, wrapped in dignity, becomes her strength, her shield, and her testimony. A silent woman understands that not every truth needs to be announced, and not every pain must be broadcasted to the world. She knows that there is strength in privacy, in keeping certain parts of her life sacred, hidden, and protected from the noise and opinions of others. Her silence is not secrecy. It is wisdom. It is the recognition that some things are too precious to be exposed to careless eyes and reckless words. She guards her thoughts, her dreams, her disappointments, and her prayers because she knows they are part of her spiritual intimacy with God, not material for public consumption. We live in a world where everything is shared instantly. Emotions, arguments, victories, and failures. But a silent woman resists that pressure. She is not driven by the need to be seen or understood by everyone. She does not need validation from strangers or applause from the crowd. Instead, she finds comfort in the presence of God, who sees what others cannot. She speaks to him about things no one else even knows she's facing. Her tears are silent, but they are not wasted. Her burdens are heavy, but she carries them with grace, knowing that she is never alone. And because she does not overshare, she is not easily wounded by the careless judgments or gossip of others. Her silence becomes a covering, a spiritual shield that keeps her protected from unnecessary attacks. The less others know, the less they can target. She lives with quiet strength, moving with intentionality and discretion. Her victories are birthed in silence and revealed only when necessary. Her failures are processed in private, healed through prayer, and transformed into wisdom. And even her moments of frustration are poured out not into social outbursts or dramatic confrontations, but into the hands of God, who faithfully listens and lovingly responds. There is a certain kind of power in being misunderstood and choosing not to correct it. A silent woman can sit in the midst of assumptions and lies, knowing that truth has no expiration date and God has no blind spots. She does not rush to explain herself to those who have already made up their minds. She has learned that explanations are wasted on closed hearts, so she preserves her energy, protects her peace, and lets time and truth speak for her. Her life, her consistency, her grace under pressure, all of these things become her voice, louder and more effective than any argument ever could be. This kind of silence is a form of spiritual discipline. It is not always easy to remain quiet when you have so much you could say, when you have every reason to speak out. But the silent woman has learned that power is not always in expression. It is often in restraint. She doesn't need to declare everything she's doing. She doesn't need to defend every decision or explain every season of her life. She knows that God is writing her story, and every chapter doesn't need a narrator. Some of her most powerful moments happen in the unseen, unheard places, between her and her God. And because she lives this way, she is protected. She does not give everyone access to her emotions, her plans, or her vulnerabilities. She knows that keeping some things between herself and God is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. Her silence becomes a sacred space, a sanctuary where she is refined, guided, and prepared. And in that space, she grows stronger, wiser, and more anchored in her purpose. While the world is busy shouting for attention, she is quietly becoming everything God has called her to be. In a world that often equates silence with weakness, may we remember the strength of a woman who chooses quiet over chaos, prayer over retaliation, and dignity over drama. A silent woman is not voiceless. She is deeply heard by the one who matters most. Her stillness is her power, her restraint is her wisdom, and her trust in God is her shield. She may not speak loudly, but her life echoes with grace, purpose, and divine protection. So let her silence not be misunderstood. It is not absence, but presence. It is not fear, but faith. And it is in that sacred silence that she is most powerfully seen, most divinely defended, and most beautifully led by God.